Today, Metropolis is holding a special celebration for Superman. As Clark Kent watches on, many people speak on how Superman saved their lives, even including one convict who was actually captured by Superman, yet is still grateful for the second chance he got, thanks to the hero. Even the Justice League went out of their way to make sure Kal-El would have a chance to celebrate this day in peace. For across time and space, the Man of Steel has looked over humanity, inspired them, and led them forward. In the far future, moments before the Earth's destruction, Kal-El says farewell to the family and world that raised him. While in the distant past, two mechanics marvel at a car which a man caught with his bare hands to save another. And today...
I am Rogol Zar. I cleanse the galaxy of the Kryptonian plague, and I am here to finish the job. Your bloodline must end once and for all. This is it. The Kryptonian sickness finally ends today, just like I once promised Jor-El when I destroyed the planet Krypton.
Hello and welcome to Comic Island. My name is Arden, and this is my review of Action Comics number 1000. Wow, so I read this book today, and it really was something. I find myself almost at a loss of words. This is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. There's not going to be another 1000-issue milestone event like this for Action Comics in our lifetime, so I'm being quite literal when I say that. And we're also celebrating Superman's 80th birthday. It's profound to think about when we look at this series and think about it coming out in 1938. That's amazing, and so reading this comic was an emotional experience for me. It has a lot of lofty little moments and nice touches that make it just so wonderful. So obviously this issue is giant and features a ton of talent to it. A lot of people do some really good work. Tom King has that story in the future. I had actually read it a while ago because DC was nice enough to let him publish the whole thing on Twitter like a week or two ago. So it was good to read in the context of the series, though. I like the little intro and kind of outro for Dan Jurgens in terms of Superman. He sort of gives a nice little send-off to the character. Jeff Johns does some pretty sappy stuff, giving the car from the original Action Comics issue that premiered Superman its own little story and stuff like that. That's fine. It's weird, but it's fine. And everyone who worked on this series does a really good job at presenting Superman and how wonderful he is as a character in terms of his significance and as this big hero, and they do some wonderful work with art. It's really good and easily deserves a recommendation. And that's definitely how I feel about the majority of this comic, but as we get near the end, Bendis comes onto play and does his little story, which is basically going to set up his launch in May with Superman. And while that's exciting, this was the most disappointing part of the comic book to me. Now, it wasn't bad, but after all these big lofty ideas about Superman in the past, the present, the future, and just all these wonderful sentiments with the characters, Scott Snyder did a really great bit with Superman and Lex Luthor, all these things that really moved me and shook my core thoughts on Superman and left me really reflecting on the character, paved the way for Bendis's big thing, and I was expecting, something to really hammer home this issue and set us up for stuff going forward. And I did not get that. I don't know what you guys think of this little ending. I haven't read any other reviews. I'm not sure how the public's reacted to this, but I found it very bog standard and disappointing. It's fine, quote unquote, but it's nothing special. It's just sort of what I'd expect out of a typical Superman story arc. It reminds me a lot of Reign, the Supergirl villain running around in the show right now that's sort of the main antagonist of the current season of that show. And there's nothing wrong with Reign or her little cohorts, they're just not terribly original. Nothing too exciting about them. And that's how I feel about this new guy whose name even though I just said it out loud in this recording during the recap, I honestly can't remember, and I'd have to go into my notes and check. I don't care enough to do that, but that's how forgettable he is. And when we look at his design, I don't know how much Bendis is behind that, or his artists were, but it was pretty boring. And this whole idea of some original destroyer of Krypton sounds really boring. I was expecting something more, and maybe that was wrong of me, but after so many big, giant events in the world of Superman in terms of, like, Superman Reborn, the return of New Earth Superman and all of that canon, the idea of Superman having a son, or Lex Luthor being a good guy for a while, all this stuff that really shook up Superman's status quo was interesting and drove us to the point of getting to issue 1000. And I expected something big and revelatory to happen here, and it didn't really. It's okay, because we're kind of just starting fresh for Bendis or whatever, but that's kind of my issue. See, there's two types of Bendis stories. There's really memorable stuff, like his time with Miles Morales and writing about all of that. And there's his bland stuff, like All New X-Men, which doesn't really have the same energy, tends to repeat itself, and just isn't memorable whatsoever. And Bendis's little story within Action Comics 1000 felt like the latter, which was really disappointing to see and a little concerning about, like, oh, we are shifting everything that's going on in Superman towards this guy right now. And his story in Action Comics number 1000 was by far the least entertaining and interesting. So that is a little concerning. But, you know, a lot of people did some great work, and one little story out of this big, almost 100-page anthology, at least the digital version that I got was like that, it doesn't matter. Like, this issue is worth getting. This moment in comic book history is worth taking part in, regardless of one little story at the end of Bendis. But that doesn't really pose that well for the immediate future regarding Superman and Bendis and all that stuff. I was expecting more in terms of ambition, so I'm a little disappointed in that regard, but the issue itself is great. All the stuff about Superman and everything is awesome. In fact, maybe it's so strong, that's why Bendis' story, which is a little more typical and along the lines of what you'd expect out of a standard Superman run, seems lackluster in comparison. But that's not an excuse. That doesn't save it. They published this. Yeah, it doesn't leave me super excited to see what Bendis does in May. I'll check it out because we're just getting started here, and hopefully there's more to all of this. Because as it stands, it's just boring. Mr. Oz was way more interesting than this. And, well, you all know why. He didn't seem to have mentioned anything about Krypton being destroyed by some dude. And obviously Superman canon's in enough of a flux right now that it doesn't really matter that this contradicts stuff from earlier, because that might not necessarily be true anymore. But I look at this villain and it's like, that dude is not Doomsday or Parasite or Lex Luthor. That's not the kind of villain that's gonna stick around for a while. He's boring. Even from the few pages he shows up in, he looks super boring and unoriginal. So, we'll see where that goes. But let me know what you guys think. This was a moment. It still is kind of sitting in my head as such. Like, oh wow, we hit Action Comics number 1000. It's an exciting little piece of DC history, and we're going to go through the same thing again when Detective Comics hits its 1000 issue mark, which isn't going to be that long from now. And that's also exciting. It's cool that we get to have these big, two long-standing series hit these giant milestones. 80 years in the making. Isn't that amazing? I find that so cool. So, thanks for sharing this little part of history with me. It's fun. I really wasn't sure what I'd think of Action Comics number 1000, but on the whole, I definitely enjoyed it, and it definitely left me, like, thinking on Superman and having, like, feeling feelings that you should feel when you're reading any kind of book. It's good. It was a really good comic. I definitely recommend it, and you should check it out at a local comic book store. It was neat. The way they were premiering this, they did a big midnight purchase thing. So a lot of comic book shops had events. Bendis was apparently even calling some of the comic book shops just to try and encourage the spirit of this comic and all it means. And that's that's nice. It was nice to read about some of that stuff going down on Twitter last night and everything. So yeah, I'm just in a good mood from all of that. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. And if you like this video, be sure to check out our Patreon page, and you can find a link to that in the video description. Finally, don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep reading comics.